how it's changed a bit throughout y'all's development process. So I'm curious, what was the drive behind the significant patch back in February that shifted from kind of the buying classes and having those ready-made classes to a more kind of streamlined but customizable approach where you actually purchase the different guns and upgrade each of those, which kind of shifted you guys to more of that customizable approach?
Yeah, I mean, the one-word answer would be community. I mean, we didn't have a petition exactly, but it was that sort of thing. I mean, definitely the beta community was asking for customization, and we went into Ascend wanting to, you know, preserve everything that made tribes awesome, but we felt really strongly about wanting to have a class-based model. We just thought that would be more interesting at the competitive level, at the entry level, and would be a good structure for the game. So like you said, our initial idea was classes. We'll introduce new classes over time, and we were pretty inspired by the League of Legends model because we thought they did a pretty good job of having a balanced free-to-play game. You know, Western audience accepted it, and they released new classes over time. So the original thought was like, hey, can we do that with an FPS? And if we pick a game that's as both, you know, tactical and strategic as Tribes, could we do that? And that was one path, but players, probably because of, you know, what everyone's used to with other FPSs, were asking for more customization, and they were certainly used to that from the old Tribes games. So based on that feedback, we thought about, okay, how can we give more customization but also preserve classes? And the most comparable other model out there would be Team Fortress 2, you know, a game that didn't release free-to-play but later became free-to-play, more of a fixed classes plus new weapons approach. And so, again, we have our differences from them, but based on the feedback from the community, we decided to go more in that direction. That would still allow us to deliver new weapons frequently, keep the game interesting, give players something new to unlock, new toys to play with, but we could keep the game balance the way we wanted to, because there'd still be a class structure. And what we really wanted to avoid was this coalescing around, you know, a few best weapons that everyone would have, and the game would get stale. And so the classes help us do that. So I think, you know, I give the community a lot of credit for being vocal around wanting customization, and our design team a lot of credit around the way they ended up accommodating them.
Yeah, I think if there's one community you can count on being vocal, it's the Tribes community. There's a lot of hardcore and invested fans.
I was actually going to ask you about that. Is that some of the kind of with that community being so vocal and like you were saying, with all the balance stuff that also comes into effect when you change anything or add anything, is that one of the biggest challenges in working on a game like Tribes? I mean, you can only keep so many people happy, I guess, but kind of being in that. It's
yeah,
a lot of plates to shuffle there.
It's definitely yeah, I mean, it's definitely a challenge, and I understand, you know, I understand the passion, and I know they hate because they love, but yeah, but yeah, it was a real challenge. I mean, again, like I said, you know, we've got these guys in the team. They're you know, getting Tribes is the happiest day in their life. They're working like crazy to make an awesome game. You know, they play with the alpha beta group, and they just go there and see rage because it's, you know, not the same as people remember from T1 or T2 specifically, and all the diatribes. So, but you know, at the end of the day, I think we didn't make every Tribes vet happy necessarily, but I think their feedback helped us make a better game, and I think we've got a game that has many more people playing it. You know, I think at the end of the day, you know, now we're fortunate to see a lot of letters from vets, you know, that really appreciate what we did. Obviously, the critical reviews, you know, we've been real pleased with the critics' reviews of the game, and a lot of new people that never would have played the old Tribes games are now discovering that awesome gameplay. So it's satisfying, but yeah, it was a grueling road to get here.
Yeah, I think that your point is definitely I think a good one that Tribes Ascend, I think, is already on a trajectory to be more successful and probably maybe not longer lasting than the original Tribes games, but certainly from a numbers perspective, a more successful endeavor. And I think anyone that says you guys aren't listening to the community, I think would be crazy, because just seeing you guys posting in the forums and the changes that have been made, you can see that passion come through for the game. So we always appreciate that.
Cool. Yeah, that's good to hear, because it's a fine line you have to walk. But we do, the team reads the forums. They're pretty active with posting, and we try to be most active with actually delivering changes in patches frequently, where people see results. So.
Yeah. Well, so kind of. Coming back to the longevity question, Tribes 1 and 2, there's still people playing those to this day. So obviously a very hardcore fan base and a lot of history there. Where do you see Tribes Ascend going in the next year, 5 years, 10 years? Do you hope to see Tribes on the same sort of lifespan as games like the original Tribes titles and Quake and Counter-Strike and StarCraft and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, as you probably know, we have esports aspirations for Tribes, since you mentioned, StarCraft and Counter-Strike and Quake, and I mean, the nice thing is that it's pretty different from what's out there. So we don't really worry too much about the competition, because other FPSs, they just play very differently, right? And even other games with jetpacks, including our own Global Agenda or newer offerings, they play very different than Tribes. They don't have the speed. They don't have the emphasis on momentum. You just literally don't go as high in any other game or as fast. So we don't worry about the competition. It's really just, how big is the audience for that type of game? And we're encouraged by what we see. So we think certainly it has the potential for a long life. Ultimately the gaming populace will decide, but we're certainly planning to support it for the long term, like I mentioned, as far as keeping the team on it. The nice thing about free-to-play models is a lot of free-to-play games, the ones that are successful, tend to not even really kind of peak, even as far as the revenue that they're bringing in, until year 3. So, and again, that's just an average. So some go much longer than that, and that's only talking about peak revenue, not when they can still be very, very successful endeavors that keeps a dev team on it and keeps the game living and supported. So.
Yeah, I gotta say, as far as the esports part of it, to me, that's the mark of a good game. Usually, if it can be played in a competitive kind of arena and work for a long time, then it's usually, I mean, that's why, Counter-Strike Sources and Counter-Strike 1.6, I mean, they're still played at a very high level and with very high stakes now. And would 1.6 come out in like 99 or 2000, Scott? Something like that? So it was,
sorry,
those have lasted forever.
Yeah, 99. Yeah, you're right on that.
Yeah, so it's been, what, nearly 13 years
Long
here?
time.
So,
yeah.
And it's still being played at a really high level. And I'll tell you, when I watch Tribes competitive streams, when there's a match on, you'll see people in the chat who have no idea what truly is going on, but they know some dude just killed some other dude going like 250 miles an hour across the map, and that alone is enough.
Yeah.
It's just so exciting to watch. I'd much rather watch that than and Pro Mod's something I enjoy, but I'd rather watch competitive Tribes than like COD 4 Pro Mod or something. It's just so fast and so skilled.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that impressed me. I mean, again, even before we were, when Ascend was just an early idea, and we were watching in the studio some of the tournament play from the older Tribes games. And I mean, the two things that kind of jump out at you are, one, you just have these I mean, I call them like the holy crap Michael Jordan moments, right? I mean, you just have, because the game is like this whole air ballet, and there's just so much kind of individual skill that can shine when you're doing across the map, you know, midair. So you have these highlight reel moments, which is cool and obviously sports-like. And then two, because of the capture the flag gameplay, you can kind of tell this narrative. You know, it's not just two guys round a corner and one of them clicked first and the other one died sort of thing. You can tell this whole narrative of here's what the offense is doing, and here's what the defense is doing, and here's the midfield. And I don't know, just even kind of the words that were used had a lot of more direct mainstream sports analogies that I could relate to immediately. So anyway, we're obviously trying to carry a lot of that spirit forward with Tribes Ascend that was in the original Tribes franchise as kind of the original internet sport, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and along with that, did you guys, now you kind of answered this anyway, but was in development, was it said that, like, we need to develop this to be an esport title, or was that not really something that truly entered into it?
I don't think we didn't use the term esport. We think as far as competitive gaming. I mean, down from and this is more Hirez than myself, but I mean the other founder, the type of games he enjoys personally are competitive games. I mean, across genres, he enjoys PvP. You know, he wants to maximize his elo. He wants to kind of keep, you know, he wants to keep competing. Doesn't tend to play as many, you know, story-driven games or RPGs or all the other awesome types of games, but you know, he plays mostly competitive games. So that's kind of the DNA of our studio. So when we built Global Agenda, it was PvP first. Let's make an awesome, balanced PvP game. We added some other stuff around it. With Tribes 2, it was or Tribes Ascend, it was also, we were originally actually going to go down an MMO path, but once we brought back in the scope, we said, hey, we're just going to focus on awesome competitive multiplayer, not even have a campaign. So that's really how we thought about it, was let's have great, balanced multiplayer, and then I would say, you know, while we were doing that, we all kind of started to discover the emerging esports scene, you know, that was bigger in Asia and starting to move over here, and think that the game would have awesome potential as an esport.
Nice. Well, there's obviously, I think so far it's been a dramatic success from what we can tell. We've gotten a lot of I think a lot of people interested in it, and I know that I personally enjoy it on just about a weekly basis. But the most interesting thing here is that that's not the only thing that you guys have up your sleeve. We've got Smite, and so I haven't really seen as much of it because I wasn't at PAX.
Yeah, we missed you.
Well, hopefully we'll rectify that here at some point. But I know Dan got to see it, and Nick as well, talking about Smite. So I guess let's talk about that a little bit, and just kind of tell us what Smite is, and really we've seen the MOBA genre really exploding over the past few years, and it now includes heavy hitters like Valve and Blizzard. And so why would someone want to? I guess what is Smite, and why would someone want to play Smite over all these other games in the market right now?
Cool. Yeah. So Smite is you know, it's a battleground of the gods, and the shortest way for anyone who's familiar with MOBA is to kind of describe it as League of Legends meets, you know, third-person camera and action controls. So, like you said, it is technically a MOBA because there's towers, there's creeps, there's 3 lanes, there's a jungle. It's 5 versus 5. You progress your character, which is a god or goddess from mythology, you know, and gain levels and items in the game. So all those things are real familiar to someone who plays League of Legends or Han or Dota 2. But the really big difference is that we bring the camera down right behind your playable character. similar to a third-person shooter camera, like we had in Global Agenda, actually. And you move around with WASD and the mouse. You're not clicking on the map to move. And every one of your powers is akin to a skill shot. So you're aiming ranged attacks, and you're orienting yourself in the right direction with melee. If you have an AoE, you have like a ground target on the ground, and so the enemies can evade. So so the thing is, once you see it and play it, most people kind of, they leave it and they're like, wow, that was really different, and it kind of felt, the combat reminded me of like a PvP Battlegrounds, whether it's a WoW Battlegrounds or other. And the combat kind of has that feel, but it's all within a game type, which is definitely MOBA. So, I think of it as you get all the best parts of an MMO PvP experience, but, it only takes 30 minutes from beginning to end, which is very appealing to me, since I got 2 kids and not as much time. Wife that asked me, are you going to be off the computer by 11? And I can get a game of Smite in every night and still be off. And so that's good. So that's why you'd want to play Smite, I guess. If you have kids and you still like PvP combat, it's a hell of a lot of fun.
Well, I got to say, when I first saw it, I was like, what is this exactly? Because I actually don't play MOBAs at all. But when I got to PAX and saw it there, and saw that it was that perspective, because I wasted possibly years of my life in WoW PvP in college and then after college playing that.
12, I think.
Yes, I did get ranked 12 in Classic WoW.
Wow.
Before the bots took me down. So I was immediately like, okay, this looks like something I could do as far as a MOBA, because I'm not a big fan of the clicking to move in that type of a game. So immediately when I saw the third person, I was like, this looks like WoW PvP. And actually WoW PvP, when it was really good and when it actually was quite popular in the Burning Crusade expansion and even in Classic, but it was actually getting up on competitions like DreamHack and stuff. We're having tournaments for it, and I was like, this reminds me of that. So that was I was immediately familiar with it, as opposed to having to learn the MOBA control system with clicking around and hotkeying skills and all that. So I don't know. I think it feels much more familiar. I can't believe someone hasn't thought of this first. Not to downplay what you guys did, but it was like, why didn't someone just make a third-person MOBA years ago when this started?
Yeah, that's right. And there definitely are, there's some other folks kind of exploring the space, but probably none that feel that have the same pacing and feel quite the same. We're friends with the folks, at doing the Super Monday Night Combat, which I would say is technically a MOBA sort of tower defense format. It just has a little more shooter aspect to the combat. Yeah. So there's definitely folks starting to explore it, which is awesome, because the MOBA, I think, again, it's a good genre that can keep growing as long as there's enough twists on it and people aren't just trying to, reskin Dota again. So, which is not what we wanted to do. I mean, it started as like a game type at a Global Agenda. I mean, we had our Global Agenda assets, and we were like, hey, this could be a fun new game type, either within Global Agenda or within the same IP. And we built like kind of a Battlegrounds mode and had the Global Agenda characters battling it out with bots and towers. And again, it was kind of like tower defense style, but with PvP in there. And it was pretty fun. But when looking at it, we thought, what could we do to really make this a home run instead of pretty fun? And there were a few big changes that came out of that, including going with the fantasy genre instead of shooter, and more specifically doing the whole mythology thing, which is pretty cool IP that not enough games have explored. Demigod was one game that did it recently, but there's a lot of cool different gods and goddesses and pantheons, and it gives our awesome artists a chance to, work with all that reference material and make really awesome looking characters. So it's been a fun game to see come together.
Yeah, I think I echo Dan's sentiment that I'm not a big MOBA player, mainly because I just typically tend to gravitate towards games that I can use WASD and kind of move my mouse around and actually have that perspective with my character. So Smite combining sort of MOBA elements with that WoW PvP feel, almost like WoW, or like Dan, I've dropped more time than I care to admit in WoW. So it's interesting because when I saw the trailer, it looks like you've got some PvE elements to the game as well that typically MOBAs don't really have. But you've got kind of an end boss and some other bosses. What's the idea behind adding kind of PvE and PvP elements?
Yeah, so there's the other MOBAs do typically have these buffs that are available from various camps in the jungle. Again, they don't maybe play as much as a PvE experience just because you're all top-down clicking on the map. But that was one element that we wanted to preserve. So we don't do it exactly the same, but you can go and take on the harpies with Medusa, and if you choose to do that side quest, basically, then you can get a gold buff, for the whole team, get a drop of gold so that people can get more items, or you can go, take down some Cyclopses and getting something to, say, reduce your cooldown. So those are these little side quests that you can make a choice to go and collect, versus take on the other players, although, of course, another player might be there as well, going after the same thing and trying to steal it. And then the way the towers work, there's friendly towers and enemy towers, and basically your job is to push those towers and help your minion creeps to push those towers and take them down. And then the final 3 towers are phoenixes, so they have a little bit of personality, although they're still stationary, but they're flaming phoenixes. And if I take down the phoenix in a lane, let's say the middle lane, then while that phoenix is down, I'm spawning flaming minions in the middle lane that do more damage and have more health, and again help me push to the final objective, which beyond those phoenixes is kind of your ultimate objective, which is a minotaur. And that is something new that we introduced, which is not have the final objective be something stationary like an altar, but actually have this minotaur come to life and start swinging his massive axe. And so you kind of get this mini boss battle there with the enemies defending it, the enemy minions, your friendlies, all typically in team fights with the minotaur swinging as well and doing massive damage. So that's a pretty cool ending to every match when the minotaur actually gets taken down. So yeah, so it was an extension of things that were there in other MOBAs, but again, kind of building on the MMO elements of a little more boss fight mechanics there.
And to go along with that, and we just talked about this with Tribes, but was competitive a huge thing in developing Smite as well? Because obviously all these games, pretty much all of them, have a pretty, obviously they're all multiplayer only, but as far League of Legends is obviously massive as far as the competitive side of things. Was that definitely a part of the development process for the game?
Yeah.
Trying to get for leagues and all that?
That's right. Yep, it was. Again, because we did Tribes first, and Tribes also kind of built on some platforms that we had for Global Agenda, then, we kind of discovered and embraced competitive and esports with Tribes. We built in, we already have, we haven't demoed it yet, but a very early draft of spectator camera support in Smite. So again, towards kind of supporting the whole streaming community, that'll be something we'll be real active in. Again, Hirez isn't going to be happy if he can't manage up his elo in Smite the way he tries to in every other game. So that means we'll have some sort of ranked play also, in addition to just kind of casual pub play. So yeah, all those are definitely priorities for us.
So, one final question on Smite, and then we're going to move on to some couple of Twitter questions from a couple of readers. Is there any sort of ETA on the beta for Smite?
We want to start it before the end of May. We've kind of been shifting the dates a little bit, and part of it's just terminology between alpha and beta. So we've been gradually adding to our alpha group, but we wanted to keep it tight, but also a very experienced group of players from other MOBAs specifically. So that's really the group that we've concentrated on and have had going, for the past month, basically. Yeah. And so we'll continue to grow that, but before we transfer to the, to the phase that we call closed beta, that's going to happen sometime in May.
All right, good, because we really want to play.
It's fun. It's one of those games that's even like, sometimes, I mean, we play it every day, obviously in the studio, and a couple times a week now. I play at least in the alpha, and it's one of those games when, when I lose, I want to play even more than when I win. It's like I just need what could I have done differently? How could I have turned the thing around? So yeah, it's a pretty satisfying game.
Cool. So I think we're moving into some Twitter questions here. We have one from Reddish Blue around tribes, asking if we're going to see the inclusion of other tribes like Star Wolf and Children of the Phoenix, rather than just the current Blood Eagle and Diamond Sword.
We will move to other tribes for cosmetic skins, but the conflict itself, the fiction, is going to remain Blood Eagle and Diamond Sword. But at some point, if you want to be Star Wolf and kind of be a mercenary for one side, we want you to be able to do that.
Cool. Next one it goes to Smite. Crunch asks, most MOBAs have a ridiculous learning curve that turns a lot of new players off. Will Smite be any different? Is it going to be friendlier to newer players?
I think the movement, in my